son to school thinking he'd be safe. The building was supposed to protect him, the teachers were supposed to watch over him, the district was supposed to care. But the truth is, the tragedy that destroyed my life wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate, it was preventable. And the people who could have stopped it didn't. I can still remember that morning, the way he tugged at my sleeve, asking me to tie his shoes tighter because they felt too loose. The way his hair stuck up at the back because he hated me brushing it down. The way he looked back at me as he climbed the steps of the yellow bus. That half smile he always gave when he wanted me to know he was okay. I didn't know it would be the last time. That's the thing about tragedy. It never comes with a warning label. Or maybe it does, and people just don't listen. In my case, there were warning signs everywhere. But the school, the administrators, the people in power, they brushed them aside. They made excuses. And their silence cost me my son. At first, it was just whispers. He'd come home complaining about the older boys. About how they blocked him in the bathroom stalls. How they shoved him in the hallway when no one was looking. I thought, like most parents, that it was normal. Kids being kids. Toughen up. Learn to stand tall. But then it got worse. He stopped eating lunch. His sandwiches came back untouched, the fruit bruised from being thrown. He begged me not to make him go to school some mornings. He started wetting the bed again. That's when I knew this wasn't just teasing. Something deeper was rotting inside those walls. I went to the school, of course. Sat in the cramped office across from the principal, a woman with a polite smile that never reached her eyes. I told her what was happening. I told her my son was terrified. She folded her hands and nodded like she had heard it all before. "We're aware of some conflicts between students," she said. "We're handling it." But nothing changed. The bruises came next. Tiny marks on his arms, a scrape across his cheek. He insisted it was nothing, that he fell, that it was an accident, but the way he flinched when I touched him told me everything. I stormed back into that office. This time, I wasn't calm. I demanded answers. I demanded action. And still, I got the same careful words, the same empty reassurances. "We're monitoring the situation. We're working with the students involved. We don't want to overreact." Overreact. That word plays in my head on repeat like a taunt. Because if they had reacted, just once, just enough, my son might still be alive. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The weeks leading up to that day were a blur of small moments that now feel like neon warning signs. The morning he asked if I would still love him if he wasn't strong. The night he hid under his blanket when a text message pinged on his phone. The way he stopped looking me in the eyes, as though he was ashamed of something he hadn't done. I begged him to tell me everything. Sometimes he would, but more often, he would just shake his head, whispering, "It'll only get worse if I do." And he was right, because the one time he finally told a teacher, when he finally broke down and admitted they had locked him in a storage closet during recess, he was dragged out in front of the whole class and told not to tattle. The bullies didn't stop, they just got smarter. They learned the cameras in the hallways didn't cover the stairwell. They learned which substitute teachers didn't pay attention. They learned my son would never fight back. And the school knew. They had reports, complaints, documentation. They had my voice on record, pleading for them to protect him. They had his broken little voice telling counselors he was scared to walk home. But no one wanted to make waves. No one wanted to admit their precious school had a problem. And then came the day that rewrote my life in blood. I remember it started like any other. He asked me to tie his shoes. He gave me that half smile. He climbed the bus steps, and I watched him disappear behind the glass. By noon, my phone was ringing. By 12:15, I was racing through traffic, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. By 12:30, I was standing outside the school, staring at flashing lights, hearing sirens wail in my bones. They said there had been an incident. They said they were handling it. But when they finally let me through the doors, when they finally led me down that long sterile hallway and into the nurse's office, I saw my son lying there, pale, still, his small chest rising shallowly under an oxygen mask. And I knew the tragedy had arrived. That was the beginning. That was the moment my world collapsed. But it wasn't the whole story. The whole story is darker, uglier, filled with secrets the school wanted to bury and truths no parent should ever have to uncover. Because what happened to my son wasn't an accident. It wasn't just kids being kids. It was a chain of deliberate failures, each one preventable. And every adult who looked away might as well have pushed him themselves. The days after the accident blurred into one long stretch of grief and confusion. I barely slept, and when I did, I woke up screaming, convinced I was back in that gymnasium, hearing the sirens, the wails, the thud of bodies falling on that cursed floor. Everyone kept telling me to rest, to take care of myself, to let the authorities handle it, but I couldn't. Something in me refused to sit still. I knew that what happened to Caleb wasn't just some random freak accident. There had been too many warnings, too many signs, and no one listened. I remember sitting across from the principal, Dr. Stevens, just a week before it all happened. I had come in for a parent-teacher conference, expecting the usual talk about Caleb's grades and his tendency to doodle in the margins of his math homework. But what I got instead was a casual mention about a slight issue with the gym roof. "Nothing to worry about," he said, shuffling papers like it was nothing. "The maintenance team has been made aware. It's just routine wear and tear. You know how old this building is." But I did worry. I remember looking at him and asking, shouldn't that be taken care of immediately? The kids are in there every day. He smiled in that patronizing way adults do when they want to shut you up without being rude. "Mrs. Green, I assure you, everything is under control." But it wasn't. The week after Caleb died, the truth started leaking out in fragments. A teacher I barely knew, Mrs. Patel, pulled me aside during the memorial service and whispered, "We told them. We told the district." Over and over. Her eyes were wet with fury, not just grief. That roof was a disaster waiting to happen. The water damage, the cracks. Even the smell. We filed report after report. They ignored us. Ignored. That word played in my head on a loop. Ignored warnings, ignored complaints, ignored danger. I started digging. I asked questions no one wanted to answer. I found emails that had been circulating among staff months earlier. Urgent. Gym roof, structural integrity concerns. Attached were photos of sagging beams, dark stains spreading across the ceiling like a growing cancer. A section of insulation dangling like a torn bandage. And each email had the same chain of responses from the district office. "We'll review in next year's budget. Currently not prioritized. Repairs deferred pending funding." Pending funding. My son died because they didn't want to spend the money. I couldn't stay quiet. The anger clawed at me from the inside out. At first, I thought maybe I could channel it through the proper channels, file complaints, attend board meetings, demand answers. But when I stood up at that first school board meeting, clutching Caleb's photo to my chest, they barely looked at me. I was given 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes to summarize my child's life and the brutal way it ended. And when I demanded accountability, demanded to know why those reports were ignored, the board chair just cleared her throat and said, "We are deeply saddened, but these things happen. It was a tragic accident." Accident. I wanted to leap across the table and shake her until she admitted what I knew. This wasn't an accident. It was negligence. It was cowardice. It was blood on their hands. But they just moved on to the next item on the agenda. Playground equipment upgrades. I walked out, shaking so hard I nearly collapsed in the parking lot. At home, things were falling apart too. My husband, Mark, grieved differently than I did. He shut down, buried himself in work, avoided conversations. I think he believed if he just stayed quiet long enough, the pain would fade. But for me, silence was suffocating. One night, I confronted him. "Don't you care?" I snapped, slamming down the stack of printed emails I'd gathered. "They knew, Mark. They knew this was coming." He looked at me like I was unraveling. "Of course I care. But what do you want me to do? Bring Caleb back? You're chasing ghosts, Hannah." "Ghosts? He's not a ghost. He was our son. And they killed him." Mark rubbed his temples, his voice low and tired. "If you keep going down this path, you're going to lose yourself. You'll lose me too." The words hit me like a punch. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because by then, something darker had started gnawing at me. Guilt. I kept replaying that parent-teacher meeting in my head. What if I had pushed harder? What if I had stormed into the district office and refused to leave until they fixed that roof? Could I have saved Caleb? The thought festered until it poisoned everything. I wasn't just grieving him. I was blaming myself for his death. It was during one of my sleepless nights, scrolling through message boards and articles about school infrastructure, that I stumbled across a thread that changed everything. A whistleblower. They didn't use their real name, but they claimed to be a maintenance worker for the district. Their posts were detailed, specific, angry. They described being told to patch over serious structural problems with cosmetic fixes. They described being pressured to downplay safety concerns in official reports. They even mentioned the gym roof, by name. My heart hammered as I read. This wasn't just negligence, this was a cover-up. I sent a private message, not expecting a response, but a week later, I got one. "You're Caleb's mom, aren't you? I'm sorry. You're right to keep digging. Meet me." The message included a time, a place. I stared at the screen for hours, my hands trembling. I should have gone to the police. I should have shown Mark. But instead, I deleted the message after memorizing the details. Because deep down, I knew this was bigger than anyone wanted to admit, and I was about to learn just how deep the rot went. The night I met the whistleblower, the air felt heavier than usual, as though the whole town knew I was about to peel back something that was never meant to see the light. It was a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where truckers stop for burnt coffee, and nobody asked questions. I sat in a booth in the corner, clutching my bag like a shield, scanning every face that walked through the door. My nerves were frayed. Every time the door chimed, my heart jumped into my throat. Finally, a man slid into the seat across from me without a word. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined in a way that spoke more of worry than age. He looked like someone who'd spent his life fixing things no one thanked him for. "You're Hannah," he said quietly. I nodded. "And you're..." "Doesn't matter who I am. What matters is you're right. They killed your boy. And they knew they would." My stomach turned to ice. What are you talking about? He pulled a folder from his jacket, thick with papers, stapled reports, photographs. He slid it across the table. That roof wasn't the only problem. Half the schools in this district are falling apart. But every time we file reports, the district tells us to make it look better. Slap on paint, patch drywall, hide the damage. I flipped through the photos with shaking hands, mold creeping along walls, rusted pipes dripping brown water, warped beams splitting down the middle. And then, the roof. The same sagging supports, the same cracks I'd seen in the leaked emails. They were warned, I whispered. Warned, begged, screamed at, but fixing it would have cost millions. And they'd rather line their pockets with new turf for the football field and renovations for the superintendent's office. The words stung. My son was dead, but somewhere, a superintendent was sitting in a shiny new office chair. Why are you showing me this? I asked. His jaw tightened. Because no one listens to us. But they'll listen to you. You're the grieving mother. You have a face, a story. They can ignore us. They can't ignore you. When I got home that night, I spread the papers across the dining room table like puzzle pieces. Mark came in late. His tie loosened, exhaustion carved into his face. He froze when he saw what I was doing. What is all this? Proof, I said, my voice raw. Proof they knew. Proof they let Caleb die. He rubbed his hands over his face, groaning. Hannah, you can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this? He was our son, I snapped. You want me to sit quietly while the people responsible walk free? While they keep endangering every other child in this town? His voice cracked when he said it. I want my wife back. I lost my son. I can't lose you too. For a second, his words pierced through my armor. But then I looked at Caleb's photo on the mantle, and the fire inside me roared back to life. I'm not stopping, I told him. Not until they answer for what they've done. The next step was the press. I called a local reporter, a young woman named Emily, who had covered the tragedy in its immediate aftermath. She sounded cautious at first, but when I told her I had documents, she agreed to meet. We sat in her cluttered office as I laid everything out, emails, reports, photos, the whistleblower's folder. She read in silence, her brow furrowing deeper with every page. Finally, she looked up. Hannah, this is explosive. If this is real, it's real. She exhaled sharply. Then we're not talking about negligence anymore. We're talking about criminal liability. For the first time since Caleb's death, I felt hope flicker. Maybe, finally, people would have to listen. But Emily hesitated. If I run this, you'll be the face of it. They'll come after you. The district, the board, even people in this community who don't want to face the truth. Are you ready for that? I thought about Caleb's smile, the way he used to run ahead of me on the way to school, his backpack bouncing on his little shoulders. Then I thought about his coffin being lowered into the ground. I'm ready. The story broke 2 weeks later. Front page of the local paper, then regional news, then national outlets picked it up. The district was exposed, its corruption laid bare. Parents were furious, teachers vindicated, the community in shock. But the backlash wasn't what I expected. Instead of gratitude, I was met with hostility. Other parents whispered that I was exploiting my son's death for attention. The superintendent's supporters claimed I was fabricating evidence. Online trolls called me hysterical, crazy, a grieving mother who didn't know when to let go. One night, someone spray-painted a liar across our garage door. Mark begged me to stop. This is tearing us apart, Hannah. We've lost Caleb, and now we're losing everything else too. But I couldn't stop, because just as the truth was finally breaking through, something even darker surfaced. Emily called me late one night, her voice trembling. Hannah, I've been digging deeper. It's worse than we thought. The district, they hid inspection reports. They forged documents, and I think someone is covering their tracks right now. One of my sources just went missing. I gripped the phone so hard, my knuckles turned white. Missing. Yes. The maintenance worker who spoke out. The one who met with you. He hasn't shown up to work in days. His phone's off. His family can't find him. My blood ran cold. The man who risked everything to tell me the truth had vanished. The morning after I learned the whistleblower had gone missing, I woke to silence. No birds, no cars, just an eerie stillness. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, feeling like I was about to be swallowed whole. Mark was already gone, leaving only a note on the counter. Please, Hannah, stop before you get hurt. But I couldn't. Something told me I was already in too deep to turn back. Emily called again that afternoon. Her voice was clipped, urgent. They're destroying evidence, she said. I have a source inside the district office who swears boxes of documents were pulled from storage last night. No one's seen them since. I clenched my fists. So they're going to bury this, just like they buried my son. Emily hesitated. Not if we find them first. That night, against every shred of common sense, I drove to the district's administration building. I sat in the parking lot, watching the windows glow faintly against the dark. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Boxes in a dumpster, a careless janitor, some shred of proof they hadn't erased yet. But what I saw instead made my stomach drop. Through the glass doors, I caught sight of Dr. Stevens, the principal who'd once smiled at me and told me everything was under control. He was wheeling a cart stacked with file boxes toward the back exit. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. Without thinking, I got out of my car. My heart thundered as I followed him around the side of the building. He stopped at a dumpster, lifted the lid, and began heaving boxes inside. Dr. Stevens? My voice cracked through the night air. He froze. Slowly, he turned, his face pale in the security light. Mrs. Green, you shouldn't be here. I took a step closer. What's in those boxes? Nothing you need to worry about. Don't lie to me. My voice shook, but I stood my ground. Those are inspection reports, aren't they? Emails. Proof you all knew that roof was unsafe. His silence was answer enough. Why? I demanded. Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you save them? His face twisted, not with guilt, but with something uglier, resentment. You think it's that simple? We begged the district for funds. They told us no. My job was on the line. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Pressure? My voice broke. My son is dead. For a moment, he looked at me like a man cornered. Then, without another word, he shoved the lid closed and walked quickly back inside, leaving me shaking, staring at the dumpster full of my son's stolen justice. By the time the police got involved, the boxes were gone. The district claimed it was routine disposal of outdated files. No crime committed, no evidence of wrongdoing. Case closed. Emily's articles kept coming, but one by one, the sources dried up. Teachers stopped talking. Parents backed away. Even the maintenance worker's disappearance was chalked up to personal reasons. It was like the whole town decided to forget. Everyone except me. The final blow came months later, in a courtroom packed with parents. A civil case against the district was dismissed. The judge ruled there was insufficient evidence of gross negligence. When the gavel struck, the room erupted, some in anger, others in relief. I just sat there, numb. Mark squeezed my hand, whispering, "We tried." But in my heart, I knew trying wasn't enough. Caleb was still gone. The truth was still buried. And the people who let it happen walked free. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the echoes of that day. The sirens, the screams, the silence that followed. And I think about the moment I sat across from Dr. Stevens, when he told me not to worry. If I had fought harder, then maybe my son would still be alive. But I didn't. And now I live with the weight of that choice. The tragedy at my child's school wasn't inevitable. It wasn't fate, it was preventable. And that's the part that haunts me the most. Because Caleb should still be here. And he isn't. After the case was dismissed, people expected me to move on. Parents stopped meeting my eyes at the grocery store. Teachers avoided me in the halls. Even friends I'd known for years found excuses not to call. It was easier for them to pretend it was just a tragedy, an accident, something no one could have prevented. But I knew better. So now, when I speak, I don't speak just as Caleb's mother. I speak to every parent who has ever been brushed off. Every mother who has ever been told, "Don't worry, it's under control." Because that's what they told me. And I believed them. And my son paid the price. If I had screamed louder, fought harder, refused to back down, maybe the roof would have been fixed. Maybe the sirens never would have come. Maybe I'd still be packing Caleb's lunch every morning. So I tell parents this. Don't trust silence. Don't accept excuses. Don't assume the people in charge care more than you do. They don't. The tragedy at my child's school was preventable. And the worst part is, deep down, I think they all knew it. But they let it happen anyway. And I will carry that truth with me until the day I die.